And if you two would like to suit up too, you're welcome. Yeah. And don't worry, I made just about 2 weeks ago. The last time, yeah. But don't worry, you're all upwind. You'll be fine.
You have one over there. Do it. Yeah, maybe take that. Yeah. Is that okay?
How about a song? Would you like a song? Yeah. All right. By the way, how did y'all came in a wagon? Oh, you walked? Oh, you didn't have a horse and wagon. Yeah, all right. Well, this song's about a wagon. That's how people get around from place to place, you know, in a wagon pulled by horses. We come with me, my Philistine, to beyond Blue Mountain Tree, where blossoms are the sweetest. Won't you come along with me? It's every Sunday morning when I am by your side. We'll jump into the wagon and I'll take a ride. Oh, wait for the wagon, wait for the wagon, oh, wait for the wagon. We'll all take a ride. Now that was the big hit song from the 50s, the 1850s. Anybody, you remember that? Yeah. And when the war came along in 1861, you heard about the war. It's in all the newspapers. Both sides took the song, changed the words to express their opinion. The southern version went like this. Come all you sons of freedom and join our southern band. We're gonna fight the Yankees, drive them from our land. We're just innocence our motto and Providence our guide. We'll jump into the wagon and all take a ride. So stick with the wagon, dissolution wagon. The South is the wagon, we'll all take a ride. The northern version went like this. Now in Uncle Sam's Dominion in 1861, the fight between the Union and secession was begun. The South declared they'd have the rights which Uncle Sam denied. Or in the session wagon, they would all take a ride. So wait for the wagon, the old Union wagon, will stick to the wagon and all take a ride. Hey! Today, we are going back in time, 160 years. Long before there were cars and trucks, that's why I said, did you come in a wagon? Back when people traveled, if they traveled anywhere, it was by walking or by horse or by wagon. And it was a terrible time in this country because there was a war going on. And there we go. And it was called the Civil War, or the war between the states, or the War of Northern Aggression, or the War of Southern Revenge. It had different names depending on your opinion. But it was time when people from the South and people from the North and parts of the United States were all fighting with guns in the streets, as we're going to talk about. Well, so we're going to go back in time. And I'm not going to tell you about what general marched what regiment up what hill, except when we get to the Battle of Hanover, then I'm going to tell you about that. I want to tell you about the people of the time and how they felt and why they did the things they did. And the best way to... Yes? Oh, okay. All right, I'll tell you what, save your stories for after I finish my stories. Then I'll listen to everybody's stories. We'll just line up. And we'll be here for the next 3 weeks. But it's all right. It's all right. So, back to a time Well, what was it? Oh, yes. I want to tell you about how the people felt and why they did the things they did. And the best way to do that is to listen to their music. Because every generation expresses itself in its music, and that was especially true for the people of the time of the Civil War. So we go back to a time when many people in the United States spoke with different accents, because they recently come over from another country to live here, or they live so far apart from each other, they just had natural different ways of speaking. So first, I would like you to picture yourself, a young man, about 18, 19, 20 years old, in Hanover, Pennsylvania, back, 162 years ago. Or from New York, Indiana, Wisconsin, Massachusetts. It's 1861, and you've just joined the Union Army, and they've issued you your new blue suit. None of them fit. They come in two sizes, too big and too small. And they put you on a train, and they shipped you hundreds of miles away from home. It's probably your first time you was ever away from home. And you find yourself in an army camp, somewhere outside Washington, D.C. You know Washington, D.C., don't you? The capital of the Union. Well, it's a big city. Well, and you're all sleeping in tents, and you're sitting outside around a campfire after you've just had a meal cooked over a campfire. And an old man, just to entertain you, pulls out an old beat-up instrument. It starts to sing a song that, if you're in our time, you've heard before. You may have heard it before, too. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, and his soul is marching on. And you heard about old John Brown, ain't you? How he tried to start the slave revolt there in Harper's Ferry, Virginia, back in 1859. And the federal troops came in, and there was a big gunfight, and they dragged him out of there, and they tried him for treason, and they hanged him. And some people said, well, that'll be the end of that. And other people, especially in the South, were saying, no, we're not going to put up with things like that. Well, it wasn't the end. It was part of the beginning. It was one of the sparks that set off the powder keg and became the big war that you folks someday will call the Civil War. And that brings us to a 40-year-old little red-haired woman. A society woman from Boston, she was. The wife of Dr. Samuel Gridley Howe, who was a very well-known doctor there and one of the leading abolitionists. Do you remember the abolitionists? They're the ones that said, we're going to get rid of slavery now, we don't know what it takes. That's how they said it, too. This is why a lot of people didn't want to listen to them at the time. Well, she was touring the army camps outside Washington, D.C., early in the war. And she heard the boys singing, John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. And a friend of hers who was with her said, Julia Ward Howe, you're a poet. Why don't you put some decent words to that song? Well, that night she went back to her room there in the Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C. And she must have been a society woman if she could afford to stay in the Willard Hotel. They wouldn't let an old Irishman like me in the lobby. But as she lay in the dark trying to go to sleep, the song was stuck in her mind, and new words came to her, because she was a poet, you see. And she later said this about that moment. That night, I lay in the dark room, line after line, shaping itself in my mind, and verse after verse. She's from Boston, stuff like that. I groped about in the dim twilight to find a piece of paper and a stump of pen I remembered to have put aside the evening before. On the occasion spoken of, she said, I completed my writing, went back to bed, and fell asleep. Well, the next morning, she woke up, surprised. Well, that's right. I wrote a poem that goes with that song. Well, she sold that poem to the Atlantic Monthly magazine. They paid her $4 for that. And At the bottom said, can be sung to the tune of John Brown's body. And so the Union troops began to sing it, and it became an anthem of the Northern cause. And I'm sure even though 160 years from our time, it'll still be considered a great American song. And this is the song version of Julia Ward Howe. And there's a part of you to sing. All right? My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He's tramping out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He's loosed the faithful lightning with his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Everybody sing. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. And one of the reasons I like to tell the stories behind the songs, besides the fact that they're wonderful stories, is it helps you understand the other verses, which you might not understand if you didn't know the story. So, like I said, you could, for instance, in this, close your eyes and in your mind, picture the image called forth in this lovely verse, the image that Julia Ward Howe saw there that night in the army camps outside Washington, D.C. I've seen him in the watchfires of 100 circling house. They builded him an altar in the evening news and damps. I can read his righteous sentence in the dim and flaring lamps. His day is marching on all together. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. For all you young people, don't sit around and look around to see if anybody else sings or not, because singing is the most wonderful thing anybody can ever do, and you should never be ashamed of singing. So just let it rip with it. Are we gonna get oh yeah. And oh yes, yes, yes. And as we said, she was one of the abolitionists. And to the abolitionists, the war was a holy cause. They believed they were doing God's work on earth. And you can hear that in this verse. I've read a fiery gospel written in burnished rose and steel. As you deal with my condemners, so with thee my grace reveal. Let the hero born of woman strike the serpent with his heel. Since God is marching on, everybody sing. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. And perhaps she worried that someday, many years from now, people would forget what the whole thing was about. So she added this verse to make it perfectly clear. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with the glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. He died to make me holy, let us die to make me free, since God is marching on all together. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Now, how many of you youngins have ever heard that song? Yeah. Well, I just sang it. So how many of you have ever heard that song? That would be everybody. Excuse me. Too much cannon smoke. So, during the Civil War, 160 years ago, people were singing. And they sang songs. Never before in this country was there such an outpouring of patriotic music. Soldiers and sailors, abolitionists, secessionists, northerners, southerners wrote songs. And many times they took popular tunes of the day and put new words to them so everybody could sing along, you see. And publishers in New York, Chicago, Philadelphia published songs and sheet music like this. that was spread all over, and people would learn the songs, you see? And the soldiers in the camps would play them on banjos or fiddles or mandolins, guitars, whatever they had, you see? And the ladies played them at home on parlor pianos. And all the soldiers carried in their haversack a little songbook. No, that's not it. Like this, only cost a dime. And it had the words to all the popular tunes. So when they said, we're going to sing this such and such a song, you go, all right, I'm going to look it up. Wait, I'll get it. I'll get it. I got it now. We finished the song. Yeah, but sometimes they were faster than others, you see. And what can't you say? A machine that plays music? No such thing as a machine that plays music. I mean, it's not like you can stick some little white strings in your ear and hear music, you know. If you want music played, you have to find a musician. And that's where I come in, you see. And so, what did they sing about? Well, of course they sang about the reason they were fighting. And this song I'm going to sing was one of the favorites, the most favorite, after battle hymn, one of the most favorites of the Union soldiers. And it's called the Battle Cry of Freedom. And it was first heard at a war rally on April 24th, 1862. And the soldiers sang it in the camp. They sang it on the march. Sometimes they was even ordered to sing it going into battle. And to show you the true power of a great song, I want to tell you this story. It's a true story. Well, all my stories are true stories, except for the ones I make up. Took place late in the war out in the West Tennessee, I think. Don't really matter quite when or where. But picture this. An entire Union regiment of soldiers was running for their lives in full retreat across an open field. In the middle of that field, there was a tree stump. And standing on that tree stump, there was a man singing this song, Battle Cry of Freedom. And as the soldiers ran by, they heard him singing, and they turned around, and he kept singing. And they stopped, and he kept singing. And they turned around and looked at him. He kept singing. And they gathered around him, and he kept singing. And they started singing. And when the whole company had finished the song all together, they picked up their muskets one more time and marched back and won the battle after all. All because of one man singing this song. Join me. Yes, we'll rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We'll gather on the hillsides and gather on the glen, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors and up with the stars, and we'll rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We are springing to the call of our brothers gone before, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We'll fill the vacant ranks with 1,000,000 free men more, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors and up with the stars, and we'll rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We will welcome to our numbers the loyal, true, and brave, shouting the battle cry of freedom. And although he may be poor, he shall never be a slave, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors and up with the stars, and we'll rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. I said, shouting the battle cry of freedom. my time, and in his time, 1861, 62, 63, this is the way the American flag looked. Because there was only 36 states at the time. And there's a star for each state. And people often ask me, well, which state is the big star in the middle? And then I say to them, which state are you from? They kept the stars for the southern states because one of the two main reasons for the war is that the South was not allowed to leave and become its own country, so they were still in the flag. In case you are wondering what that flag is there. And by the way, at that time, you could put the stars on the flag in any order you wanted, as long as you got the right number. So, that's a very nice way to do it, isn't it? Yes, quite good. Well, oh yes. So, what did they sing about? Well, they sang about the girl they left behind them. Because when the soldiers left, they probably had a wife or a sweetheart, or maybe a girl they had loved from afar, and were too shy to say anything and never got a chance to tell. And as you ladies know, hold your thoughts, and after the show, I'll get, or you just stretch it. Well, hold your thoughts, and after the show, I'll hear all your stories too. All right? Yes. All right. What was that? Oh, yes. Well, and as you ladies know, men don't like to talk about their feelings much. But in the darkness, outside the ring of light made by a campfire, a man could sing along on a song and let out all the feelings he had for the girl he left behind. And you know, it don't really matter what the name of the girl in the song is, because in his heart, he knows what girl he's singing about. And this one was a favorite of the Union boys, the boys in blue, the Yankees, the Federals. They had many names for us. And the rebels had many names for us too, which I won't repeat in front of ladies and children here today. And this one, a favorite of the boys in blue. It's a love song. I know you children are a little bit like, oh, I don't want to hear. The ladies back there want to hear a nice love song. When the blackbird in the spring on the willow tree sat and rocked, I heard him sing, singing Orally, 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 made of golden hair. Sunshine came along with thee and the swallows in the air. In thy blush the rose was born, music when you spake. Through thine azure eye the morn softly seemed to break. Orally, Orally, birds of crimson wing, never song has sung to me as in that sweet spring. When the mistletoe was green midst the winter snows, sunshine in thy face was seen, kissing lips of rose. Orally, Orally, take my golden ring, love and light return with thee and the swallows in the spring. Orally, Orally, made of golden hair, sunshine came along with thee and the swallows in the air. It's a lovely tune, isn't it? But you know, every time I sing that, there's somebody off to the aside singing the words, love me tender, love me sweet. I have no idea why. They don't either. But I suppose someday, 90 years from now or something, some boy will come along, put words like that to it, make a lot of money out of it. Just start out to be a Southern boy. You know, just ironically, that would be. So, The soldiers would march mostly all day, and then they would go into battle and be shooting at each other, the South on one side, the North on the other. And many men would be wounded and died, and those who survived would come back to an army camp and sit around and have dinner. And you may wonder, what was a soldier's dinner like? Well, it wasn't very much, especially for the Confederates towards the end of the war. By one time, a Union soldier was marching a Confederate prisoner back to the rear of the lines, and he looked him up and down and he chatted with him. And after he put him in the cage there, he later sat down and wrote a letter to his parents, and he described that Confederate soldier. And he said, "Hey, they're hungry-looking men they are too. We are not living off the fat of the land, but I looked into the haversacks of some of Hill's men, and many of them had nothing more than a handful of cornmeal in their canvas sack. How a man can survive on nothing more than cornmeal is more than I can understand." But the Union troops didn't eat that much better. Pretty much came down to hardtack and salt beef. So, my friends, here is a soldier's meal. You can't see it up close. Don't worry, I'll hold it up. This is salt beef. A chunk of beef I've had going on, 3 years now. 3.5. Don't worry, we'll eat it. He and I'll eat it before the day's over. Now we can shave this down, boil it up, and have a fine, we have a meal. Now I know there's some Doubting Thomas or two in this crowd and thinks that's just a rock. That's not an old piece of meat that you've... By the way, how do we keep it from going bad? We pack it in salt. You see, you can see the salt right there. But I know we have a Doubting Thomas or two who are saying that's just an old rock. That's not a chunk of meat. How many here anybody here like to smell, take a whiff of this just to prove to everybody that it's not a rock? No takers on that. Usually I get a few. Yes. Anybody here ever smelled a rock? Why are you going around smelling rocks? Would you like to take a whiff of this? No? You'll take my word for it. All right. Then they ate a lot of them flour and water hardtack biscuits. This is what they call hardtack. It was essentially just a big hard cracker. So hard that if you really bit into it, you'd break your teeth, most likely. Now the thing about the hardtack is it sat around in boxes like that, and little critters got in there like maggots and weevils. You know weevils? They're about this big, and they crawl around in it. Would you like to see them up close? I probably can find a few. That's pretty clean. It's different, yeah. So, in fact, one time, one soldier said, "The only fresh meat we ever got came right inside the hardtack. And since I prefer my game cooked, I used to toast my biscuits." Ooh, this is a tough crowd. All right, I got another hardtack joke. I'm not giving up on that, all right? You're going to find this one hilariously funny. All right. One time, the entire company comes down with terrible belly aches. Oh, they had belly aches. Oh. Anybody here ever had a belly ache? Bad hardtack. That's probably what it was. And the lieutenant thinks about it and he says, "The hardtack's bad, then throw away the hardtack." So they threw away the hardtack. By and by, he comes through camp. There's a soldier sitting by his foot, gnawing on his hardtack. He said, "Soldier, I thought I told you to throw away the hardtack." So he said, "I did throw it away, sir. Come crawling back to me." About 10 years from now, you'll get that joke. And then you'll laugh and you go, "That wasn't that funny anyway." All right. So, it was a terrible time. And when the soldiers were sitting around the camp, and the campfire smoke was in their throat, they didn't really want to sit around and dwell on all the terrible things that was going on. So they would write little songs about things they wanted to complain about. And this one they wrote about their favorite food. And I'm sure it's your favorite food too. Take a minute, think of your favorite food. You ready? You got it? Here it is. You got it in your mind? This is it. The song is called "The Army Bean." That's not what you picked? No accounting for taste. Yes. And this is one of those songs that they wrote to a song that everybody knew so they could sing along. And this is to the old church tune, The Sweet By and By. Does anybody here know The Sweet By and By? Well, you won't recognize it when I'm done with it. I want you to know. So one night around the camp, just for fun, they sang this. There's a place that the soldiers all love. The mess pit's the place that we meet. And the dish we like best to see there is the old-fashioned white army bean. It's the bean that we mean, and we'll eat as we ne'er ate before. The army bean, nice and clean, and we'll stick to our beans evermore. Oh, the German is fond of sauerkraut. Now, whenever I'm singing in Pennsylvania, or for Pennsylvania Division, I always put that line in, because there's always a Pennsylvania Dutchman or two in the back, and they're asleep until you mention sauerkraut, and then we go. Futzot, you say the sauerkraut? That was a terrible German accent, wasn't it? Terrible, right? So, oh, the German, anybody here ever had sauerkraut? Usually on New Year's. Yeah. And did you like it? It's like you have to eat it on New Year's or they throw you out of the state. Oh, the German is fond of sauerkraut. The potato is stuffed by the neck. That's the Irish, that's me. But the soldiers have long since found out that through life, to our beans we should stick. Well, we'll stick to the beans, although the beans won't necessarily stick to us, if you know what I mean. You don't want to sit around and think about an entire camp full of men who've been eating nothing but beans for the last 3 weeks. I'm sorry I brought the whole thing up. It's the beans that you eat, and we'll eat as we ne'er ate before. The army bean, nice and clean, and we'll stick to our beans evermore. Now another night, around another campfire, another soldier, we don't know who he was, but took that song and changed the words around again to sing about another common army gripe, the lice, the cooties, little bugs, what the Confederates called Bragg's buddy barb. Excuse me, sir, I think that one got on your head. Just wipe it off. No, that you right there. That you. Oh, yeah, just wipe it. Yeah, they got quite a range, like hours. And they really go. Some of you in the back may get some of these too. Now, killing the lice was called fighting under the black flag. And now a lady in the back might say, "You mean to tell me those boys have lice?" Well, I can tell you, ma'am, is if you spend several months, several weeks, several months sleeping on the ground, hiding in the bushes so you don't get killed, you don't get to bathe much, and you don't get to change clothes much, you'll pick up a few friends. And you'll lose a few friends. And you know, you'll all be doing this in about 2 minutes, just watching. So one night, a soldier decided he would write a little song about it. One of the most lovely little poems ever written, and we have no idea who wrote it. It just was in a diary somewhere, and I read it, and I have no idea anyway. Soldiers sing of their beans and canteens, of the coffee in old army cup. Why not mention the small friends we've seen, always trying to chew armies up? Those from friends, tireless friends, hardly ever neglecting their hugs. Their regard never ends. How they loved us, those old army bugs. Well, so, this was a war that was fought right here in our own country, the United States. It was fought right here in Pennsylvania. And one of the most famous battles of it took place not far from here, in a place called Gettysburg. Anybody here been to Gettysburg? to see where the battle was. But you know what? Oh, you live close to Gettysburg? You know what, Joe? There was not only a battle in Gettysburg, there was a battle right here in Hanover, Pennsylvania, that took place right in the streets of Hanover. Major General J.E.B. Jeb Stuart, who was head of the Confederate cavalry, was riding north to get around the Union Army of the Potomac. He wanted to meet up with Robert E. Lee's army because he was always considered the eyes and ears of Lee's army. And Lee counted on him to take his cavalry around and find out where all the Union troops were so that he had a better idea of how to do his battle. Well, his cavalry attacked a Union cavalry regiment, driving it through the streets of Hanover. They were on their horses, riding right through the streets of Hanover, shooting at each other. A brigadier general named Elon Farnsworth Brigade arrived and counterattacked, routing the Confederates and driving them out of town, almost capturing General Stuart himself. And Farnsworth held his ground, and a stalemate ensued. Stuart was forced to continue north and east to get around the Union cavalry, which further delayed his attempt to meet up with General Robert E. Lee. Well, shortly before 10 a.m., the rear guard of the 18th Pennsylvania Cavalry encountered Confederate scouts about 3 miles southwest of Hanover at a place called Gitt's Mill. You folks heard of Gitt's Mill? Is it still around? Still around, yes, you see. Also that morning, a series of engagements occurred at Littlestown. Anybody heard of Littlestown? It's such a big city, you would probably know it. Maybe not, yes. Well, southwest at a tiny little town that you folks now call Pennville, the 2nd North Carolina Cavalry struck the 18th Pennsylvania's main column, and Union survivors retreated in disorder through the streets of Hanover. Just picture this, folks. The Civil War was happening right out in the main streets of Hanover. Yeah. Well, when another Virginia brigade arrived, Stuart moved his and Chambliss's men into a new position on a ridge from the Keller Farm southwest of Hanover to Mount Olivet Cemetery southeast of town. How many of you have heard of Mount Olivet Cemetery? How many of you have been to Mount Olivet Cemetery? How many of you hope you don't end up in Mount Olivet? That's a whole other thing. Yes, that's right. And they set up cannons there. And the Union set up cannons. And for 2 hours through the afternoon of June 30th, which is the same date as today, the day before the Battle of Gettysburg began, they were firing cannons at each other. There were townspeople in the way. Let's see, where is the one I want to tell you about? Oh yes, fragments of the cannonballs blasted holes in several houses, narrowly missed killing a lady named Mrs. Henry Weinbrenner and her daughter. Do the Weinbrenners still live in Hanover? There you go. Yes. They had just left their balcony when a projectile came hurtling through the upstairs. Well, the losses at Hanover were relatively light, as formed in the way of casualties. But the cost to the Confederates in delaying Jeb Stuart from linking up with Lee was even more costly. The delays caused by the Battle of Hanover helped the Union side win the Battle of Gettysburg. And the Battle of Gettysburg was the turning point of the war. So your ancestors here in Hanover were really the focal point of the turning point of the war, because they kept Jeb Stuart from getting to Hanover, or to Gettysburg, excuse me. Well, moving on. There are some songs that cannot be sung in a blue uniform. And there were two sides to this. I've been singing songs from the northern side. But to some songs, that fella just won't sing. And it's like, but I'll find somebody to sing them for you. Would you like me to find them for you? All right? Hold this fella off, make sure he doesn't shoot the guy that comes down. Every time the Yankee shows up, he shows up too, and he don't want the Yankee to get the last word in. Yes, so let me go back here. Come on up, it's your time. It's about time. I've been waiting back here all this time. I know. Yankee, yeah. It'll take a few minutes. There's a lot of buttons involved. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are y'all today? Let's have some noise for the Southern boys. I won't look over that. Thank you. I thought I would never get on. I swan to John. Them Yankees John all the time. That's how we got into this fix. Them Yankees John all the time. Oh, I'm sorry. There's ladies present. That's politics. We don't want to discuss politics and offend their tender sensibilities. Well, us Southern boys, we had our favorite songs too. In fact, we had the most popular song of the entire period. And he chose, let me just steal something out of the Yankees' haversack here. Is he gone? He'll never miss it. Well, they'll miss it, then it'll be too late. I'll bet he has one in here. Let me just see if I can find it. Yes. We had the most popular song of the entire period. I'll bet you know it. It goes like this. By the way, a little tip for you folks, this is a harmonica. A little tip for you folks who would like to learn to play one of these. You can play it like this. You can play it like this. But never attempt to play it like this. Hard on the nose. Once again, after the show, I'll hear all your stories. All right? Yes. Because if I tell stories and you tell stories, we'll be here all day. Oh, yes. Here it is. What is that song? Thank God I tell we had a bunch of Yankees. Tonight. It is Dixie, or Dixie's Land. And the South, where I come from, before the war was known as the land of Dixies. Would you like to know why? I'm glad you said that, ma'am. Otherwise, there's a long pause. Well, some people think it had to do with Mr. Mason and Mr. Dixon, who drew some kind of a line south of here. You know, I just marched over that territory. I never saw a line. Have you ever seen a line? Just like the government tell you there's a line. When a fool can see there... I'm sorry, that's politics. This lady's present with me. No, it has to do with money. Most things do. Yeah. Now, before the war of northern aggression, the war between the states, that one we're talking about, he's going to shoot me before this whole thing is over. I can just... he's loading up right now. Oh, you've got a bayonet, too. All right, we just sing very quietly. What was that? Oh, yes. Before the war, not only did the government issue money, but large and small banks issued their own money, too. And the larger the bank, the more stable the currency. The more stable the currency, the more popular the currency. And the largest bank in the South was the Bank of Nolans. Now, y'all know Nolans, don't you? For the Yankees in the back, that's this one over here. That's New Orleans, but it's Nolans. Everybody say that, Nolans. You know, I have you speak in Southern before you leave, and then he'll bayonet every one of us. Well, now, the largest bank in the South was the Bank of Nolans. And the most popular bill of currency in circulation from the Bank of Nolans, Bank of Louisiana, was the $10 bill. All the fellas like to keep one or two of them in their pockets so they could never be arrested for vagaries, because they always had a little bit of money with them. Now, Nolans being a French-speaking city, the French word for 10 was printed on the bill. Now, y'all know the French word for 10, don't you? Well, they teach you up here in these Yankee schools. It is D, spelled D-I-X. Now, the longshoremen and the boatmen on the great Mississippi River boats, they did not speak French either. And they pronounced that word as Dix. And over the years, they began calling those bills Dixies. And over many more years, the area in which those bills circulated, the South, became known as the land of Dixies. And that brings us to 1859, and an Ohio boy, a Yankee for God's sake, named Daniel Decatur Emmett. And he had run away from home as a boy, served as an army fighter, and worked as a circus musician. And he was one of the originators of the minstrel shows. And the minstrel shows were the most popular form of theatrical entertainment in the entire country, the South and the North, in the 1860s, where white people painted their faces black with grease paint and sang songs in the styles of the African street musicians that they had heard playing on the streets of southern cities, and the slaves, in the style of the slaves on the southern plantations. Well, in 1859, he was living in New York City. New York City? That's right, New York City. And he was approached by some fellas from a group called Bryant's Minstrels. And they asked him to perform a snappy new walk-around song for the next Monday night's performance. Now, the walk-around was the final climactic song of any minstrel show, so it had to be a rousing, upbeat number. And he later said this about that moment of inspiration. I tried to think, he's from Ohio, spoke like this. I tried to think up something special, but my thinking apparatus was dormant. So I went to a trunk full of scraps of paper I'd been working on, finished it up, brought it out, finished it up, titled it Dixie. Had it not been for that hurry-up request, the song might never have come out. He later also said, if I'd known it was going to be so popular, I'd have wrote it better. Well, it was quite good as it was. And on September 29, 1859, Dixie was sung for the first time. The crowd went wild. They stomped and cheered. They asked for encore after encore. They came back night after night to hear that song again. And within a few months, it was published. And by 1860, it was being played everywhere across the country. And by 1862, it was the most popular song in a brand new country, the Confederate States of America. And an appropriate song, too, because it talks about living and dying for Dixie. And in fact, the Southern troops were living and dying for Dixie. A song so popular that just about everybody wrote verses to it. There are probably hundreds of verses to this song. Would you like to hear them all? It takes about 3 weeks, but you're not going back to school till then, right? All right, I'll give you a medley of 60 or 70 just to tide you over. From the original minstrel version, but Daniel Decatur Emmett. Well, I wish I was in the land of cotton, old times there and now forgotten away. Look away, Dixieland, in Dixieland, where I was born early on one frosty morning. Look away, Dixieland, which I was in Dixie, away, away. In Dixieland, I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie, away, away. Way down south in Dixie, there's buckwheat cakes and Indian butter, makes you fat, little fatter. Look away, Dixieland. Then hoe it down and scratch your gravel. The Dixieland I'm bound to travel. Look away, Dixieland. Wish I was in Dixie, away, away. In Dixieland we'll take a stand to live and die in Dixie, away, away. Way down south in Dixie. And then General Albert Pike of Arkansas thought it'd be a good call to arms for Southern boys. He wrote these words to it. Oh, South frontier, your country call you up, lest birth and death befall you. To arms, to arms, to arms for Dixie. Although the beacon fire is lighted, let our hearts be now united. To arms, to arms, to arms for Dixie. That's the flag of Dixie. To arms, for Dixieland will take the stand to live and die in Dixie. To arms, to arms, to arms. Now, one of the children here asked me if we were going to dance. And this is a perfect song to dance to. And these kids have been sitting here. Give the kids a round of applause. And actually, all get up and do the Virginia Reel. You don't know what that is, but I don't know either. It's some kind of dance. So anybody would like to dance, just right in your place, get up and step around a bit. Stand up right now. Come on, children. That's right. And we'll just, I'll tell you, you know what you can do? I know what you do. Here's what you do. Get a partner. And then, can I demonstrate with you, sir? And then you're going to link arms, this one, like this. And you're going to go around like this. And then you're going to change arms and go around like this. And we're going to do that till, that's it, just like that. Now switch arms. Yeah. And we'll do that till everybody falls over. All right. You got a partner? Got a partner? Got a partner? Got a partner? Somebody needs to be his partner here. Thank you, sir. Well, I'm excited. Round of applause for all the dancers. So that brings us to the second most popular song for the Southern boys. A song called The Bonnie Blue Flag. A song about the Bonnie Blue Flag. Which is why they called it the Bonnie Blue Flag. She's with me on this. She has this whole thing going. And what was the Bonnie Blue Flag, you might ask? Well, even before the war, many of the people in the South felt of themselves as living in a land apart. And they wanted a flag they could rally around. And the first flag they came up with was a lovely, simple flag with a blue background and a white star. And when Confederate militia fired on Fort Sumter, that was the flag they were flying. It did not last long. It was soon followed by other flags of the Confederacy. But in all the flags of the Confederacy, you'll see a bit of the Bonnie Blue, the blue background, and the white star. And while we are speaking of flags, let us speak of this flag. People speak heatedly of this flag, and someone will say, what is that flag? And someone may say, it is the Stars and Bars. But ladies and gentlemen, that is not the Stars and Bars. This, and he don't care about none of this anyway. This is the Stars and Bars, the first national flag of the Confederacy. The problem with this flag was that in the smoke and dust of battle, it looked a lot like that flag, the Union flag, against which the boys was in open rebellion. And each army follows its flag into battle, and that's partly how they know where each army, the front line of each army is. And if each flag looks somewhat similar, it is going to be a more confusing and bloody, terrifying mess than it would have otherwise been. So the Confederate legislature went back and gave the boys the second national flag of the Confederacy, this one, which they called the Stainless Banner. Notice that the main field is all white. They chose that color on purpose. That's the kind of society they were building. The problem with this flag was that at rest, it sometimes looked like a surrender flag. The boys did not want to think that their national flag looked like a surrender flag. So the Confederate legislature, in its infinite wisdom, went back and gave the boys the third national flag of the Confederacy, this one. And I too believe there would have been more national flags of the Confederacy, but the Confederacy only lasted 3 flags long. And I too believe that while the boys were fighting the war, most of the politicians in Richmond were fighting over what flag they would be using. But, so, we come back to this flag. And someone will say, well, what is that flag? And a person will tell you that, they will say, that's the battle flag of the Confederacy. But ladies and gentlemen, that is not exactly the battle flag of the Confederacy. Because it is a rectangle. If it was square, it would be the battle flag of the Confederacy. Geometry. How many of you wanted to have geometry when you came in here? Not really. If it was square, it would be the battle flag of the Confederacy. As it is a rectangle, it is the naval jack, which means it flies on the back end of a ship. One of 2 naval jacks the Confederacy had. Are you confused yet? Well, I know I am, and I wanted to share that. So we're going to go back to the bonnie blue flag. A song written by Mr. Harry McCarthy, a songwriter and performer who actually sang for Southern soldiers in the field, much as I am singing for you here today. In fact, he sat on this very cabin. Kept it all these years. The song, the melody is to an old Irish tune, the Irish Johnson car. You can't get rid of them Irish songs everywhere you go. It was first sung at the Variety Theater in New Orleans in April of 1861. Yeah. It compares the Confederates to the Patriots of 1776. And the boys did think of themselves as fighting in the Second American Revolution. Well, so, without further ado, let me sing the song. We are a band of brothers native to the soil, fighting for the property we gained with honest toil. When our rights are threatened, the cry rose near and far. Hurrah for the monument flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah, for Southern rights, hurrah. Hurrah for the monument flag that bears a single star. As long as the Union is faithful to her trust, like friends and like brethren, kind we were and just. But now in northern treachery attempts our rights to mar, we'll hoist on high the monument flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah, for Southern rights, hurrah. Hurrah for the monument flag that bears a single star. And here's the brave Virginia, the old Dominion state, with the young Confederacy, a lengthless link of fate. Held by her example, other states prepare to raise on high the bonnie blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah, for Southern rights, hurrah. Hurrah for the bonnie blue flag that bears a single star. And here's to our Confederacy, strong we are and brave, like patriots of old, we'll fight our heritage to save. Rather than submit to shame to die, we would prefer. So cheer for the bonnie blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah, for Southern rights, hurrah. Hurrah for the bonnie blue flag that bears a single star. But I have one more point, if I may, to bring it all to a close. And so the war went on for 4 long years, until April of 1865. And Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox. And the boys took off their ragged uniforms, stacked their muskets, and went home. And of course, over 400,000 of them would never go home again. And in the South, many of the boys had no home left to go to, but they went to wherever the family was. And up north, the Union troops were coming back, and the home folks were getting ready for them. And as the home folks prepared to welcome their Johnny boys back from the war, they sang this song. Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. Give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies, they will all turn out. Well, I'll be glad when Johnny comes marching home. The old church bell will be with joy, hurrah, hurrah. To welcome home our darling boy, hurrah, hurrah. The village lads and lassies say with roses, they will strew the way. And we'll all be glad when Johnny comes marching home. Ready for the Jubilee, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give our heroes 3 times 3, hurrah, hurrah. The laurel wreath is ready now to place upon his royal rock. We'll all be glad when Johnny comes marching home. The love and friendship on that day, hurrah, hurrah. The choicest treasures in display, hurrah, hurrah. And let each one from fonts apart to welcome home the warrior's heart. We'll all be glad when Johnny comes marching home. And isn't it a pity that there always seems to be a war somewhere for Johnnies to go marching off to? And what a tragedy that there's always Johnnies who never do come marching home. But still, we must always remember that. When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. We give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies, they will all turn out. We'll all be glad when Johnny comes marching home. We'll all be glad when Johnny comes marching home. And now I leave you with this prayer that we never again in our country find reason to kill each other, brother against brother. We'll all be glad when Johnny comes marching home. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out today. I have a word from some lovely Yankee ladies. You're welcome to sit on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you to everyone who came today. My name is Justine Trexis. I'm a wonderful Yankee girl. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about why we're here today for the Battle of Hanover commemoration event. My coworker Noelle Soyson's in the back, so please make sure you stop by the table to pick up what we're celebrating here, aside from the commemoration of today's event. The Heart of Hanover Trails is a self-guided walking tour history program that my organization, Main Street Hanover, launched last year, and we recently received an award for this program with our tell you a little bit about the program, but before I do, I'd like to recognize my project team member, Matthew Jackson. If you would stand, please, to be recognized. Thank you. Matthew and I worked tirelessly on this program for the last number of years, and we're incredibly proud that there have been a lot of people who come to see it. We're incredibly proud to commemorate the history of this wonderful community through historic markers throughout town. So later on today, directly following this program at noon, if anyone wants to go to the Nace House, which is owned and operated by the Hanover Area Historical Society, they will be doing some programming around Civil War era wardrobe and clothing. So I really would encourage you to go there at noon. And then at 1 o'clock, my team member Matthew will be leading a guided walking tour. So typically you can pick up this program or visit our website and follow along to find all of the markers and learn about Hanover's history. But today at 1 o'clock you'll be able to get a led tour by Matthew Jackson and Mark Sharice, and they'll be doing that, like I said, at 1 o'clock starting at the Nace House. So quickly, I wanted to thank Kelly for putting on this program here today. I wanted to tell you a little bit about this award, because that's why I'm so proud to talk to you here today. So the Pennsylvania Downtown Center oversees the Main Street programming for the state of Pennsylvania, and they decided to award us for physical improvements in a public space this year. Meaning we let them know about our program. We connected with the Civil War Trails. We were funded by Explore York to put this on, and we were chosen as an awardee for that event. So I really just wanted to make sure I shared that incredible news. We're very proud of this program, and we hope you take your brochures with you and make sure that you will walk the tour with us. We do have some guests here today. I know from Representative Kate Klump's office here, and I know we have Kirsten Laird from Senator Kristen Phillips Hill, and her Kristen's husband Rick is here as well. So please, if you guys wanted to come up, I know that you may have some also.
Really just want to again congratulate you guys. This is amazing. The Senator sent her regrets that she cannot be here today. Actually, on the way here, the Senator's husband said that, what exactly is the relation? An ancestor. The Senators actually fought in the battle here in Hanover. So she was really upset that she couldn't make it today. Next year. Yeah, hopefully next year's not in budget.
That's right, that's right.
But again, just congratulations. A wonderful achievement for the entire team.
Oh, thank you so much.
On behalf of the 169 district and Representative Plum, she also can't be in attendance today because they are currently working on finishing up the budget. We have two actually broken out ones the House did. It's for Matt Jackson and Brandon Winger.
Here, yes, Matt.
These are Kate sends her best regards to you all, and she's so she couldn't be here. So congratulations on the recognition. So you can see Brandon.
Oh, here. Okay. All right. We'll take a little bit more photos. So thank you all again for coming. We really appreciate 169th District, Representative Kate Plum, and Senator Kristen Phillips Hill and her team for being here this evening. And thank you all, and I hope you enjoy our Heart of Hanover Trails program and the rest of the Battle of Hanover Commemoration Fest. Thank you.